Welcome to Vinyl Poetry Lounge, where legendary lyrics spark poetic fires. I'm your hostess for the next hour, Jana Lopez. So kick back, relax, and let the words carry you home. Well, hi there and welcome. It's Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, maybe it's Monday, depending on where you are in the world. But what it is the Vinyl Poetry Lounge, the place where I would like to think that we have a chance to kick back, relax. Maybe you can grab something adult and tasty, like a beverage of your choice: wine, beer, cocktail, martini, margarita, whatever. And just give yourself the chance to have this week, this time, and this moment to hang out with me, your hostess, Jana Lopez, and just walk down memory lane, relive some of your favorite songs, reflect on some of your favorite lyrics, and just give yourself a chance to hang out. And that's what the idea of this is, to just hang out. And so, again, I'm Jana Lopez, and I serve a couple of roles out in the world. One of my things that I'm involved with is I help writers become authors, where I coach them and work on finishing books or starting books of their dreams. And a lot of times that's because writers have so many struggles and hangups and things I call snares. And to help them get clear and connected, poetry has been the way that they've untangled some knots of creativity and have found freedom. So that's the one way poetry shows up in my life. The other way poetry shows up in my life is that I am the inaugural poet in residence at Creighton University's School of Medicine. And I am the first in the country, I believe, to be housed in a school of medicine teaching poetry specifically to help people connect, heal, learn how to express while they're in medical school, help faculty deal with burnout and stress, and work with some very smart people, physicians, nurses, doctors, and really giving them a way to clear their emotional clutter. And poetry is the way. And so I'm committed to my work of helping people understand why poetry can be so powerful. And one of the things that I feel and teach and talk about all the time is that it's here with us every day, available. All we have to do is look around, and lyrics in songs that we grew up with are just chock full of gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous poetry. And so what better way to bring the two things together that I love so much: poetry and music. And so this is where we get to come together and just hang out and just be together and just talk music and poetry. And with me is my co-pilot, Jared McMullen, my producer, and he's been amazing in helping me make this dream a reality with the behind the scenes production. So my thank you to Jared. And if anybody needs streaming help or support in this way, he's been great. I highly recommend him. And so what we're going to do tonight is I have two songs that we are going to look at the lyrics for. And before we do that, I'm going to say hello to a couple of people who have reached out. So, hey, Sunil. Good to see you. Thank you for being with me. What's up, Patty Sue? I'm so happy you're here. And so let's begin with a question. Actually, I was going to start, but I had a question. So, for those of you who watched last week, we had Dust in the Wind and Let It Be. And the week before that, we had Take the Long Way Home. And we've had Someone Saved My Life tonight. We had Stairway to Heaven. So, I'm just curious, when you have heard these songs, after we talked about them and after we unpacked the lyrics, did those songs have new meaning? Did you hear them with fresh ears? Did they bring new insight and inspiration? That is my question for you who have seen the last few episodes, if it's made an impact and if you're hearing songs in new ways. Okay, so first up, we are going to talk about Pink Floyd. Now, if you can imagine how hard it must have been, I'm not feeling sorry for myself or anything, but if you can imagine how hard it must have been for me to pick a single Pink Floyd song to talk about the lyrics. Oh, just so many great songs from Pink Floyd. Musically, of course. Lyrically, they write some amazing, amazing poems in their music. But I wanted to come back to a song that I have listened to so many times, and it seems like every time I've heard this song, I have heard it with new ears every single time. And I don't know if it's the haunting melody or the beauty or the simplicity or complexity of this song, but it does come from one of my favorite Pink Floyd albums, which is hard to say because there's so many good ones. But we're going to talk about Wish You Were Here. And so let's take a look at the band, and we'll talk a little bit about how they came up with their name. And so one thing I've done on Vinyl Poetry Lounge is when I talk about a band, I dig in a little bit, and I'm always curious about how the band has gotten its name. And so Pink Floyd, what's that about, right? And so the name Pink Floyd came from a spontaneous, very Syd Barrett moment, creative, instinctive, and rooted in music history. And in the mid-1960s, the band was still figuring out who they were and what to call themselves. And so at one point, Pink Floyd had the names the T-Set and Sigma 6. And Syd Barrett used to be one of the early founding members of Pink Floyd. And so they discovered they had this name that was already taken. And so on the spot, Syd Barrett decided that, hey, we need to come up with a new name. And so he looked through his record collection and he combined the names of two American blues musicians, Pink Anderson and Floyd Council. And so what he did is he merged them, and they called themselves the Pink Floyd Sound. And over time, they just shortened it to Pink Floyd. And this matters because even though Pink Floyd was known for this psychedelic experimental sound, they really wanted their reputation and image to be rooted in traditional American blues. And so the name Pink Floyd was just like a subtle nod to this lineage and tradition and respect for earlier artists who had come before them. And so the way they got their name, I think, really reflects the identity of Pink Floyd, how they were improvising, how they were extremely creative under pressure, and that they were definitely connected to the origin and the roots of legendary musicians before them. And so even though it was a quick decision, it became something that was so well suited and perfectly aligned with the Pink Floyd that they wanted to become. So Syd Barrett was one of the founding members, the original band leader, and he was the creative visionary for the band. He was the lead singer, the guitarist, and the primary songwriter in the early years. And why he was so important is because he was the architect of their sound, their early sound, that psychedelic, surreal, whimsical, experimental sounds. And he really helped define that 1960s psychedelic rock sound with his work. So Sid was known for being a brilliant but fragile-minded individual. He had a wild imagination. He was very abstract in his creativity. And they also called him very poetic, which I love. And he also struggled with mental health issues and extreme LSD use. And so all of this creativity was paired with this like volatility, and it became untenable. And he was starting to really drift away further and further from reality. And in 1968, Sid became super unpredictable. He would stand on stage and he wouldn't play, he would forget songs, he would drift during performances. And the band had to make this really difficult decision of letting him go. And eventually, because of this, guess who they brought in his place? David Gilmour. So the tragedy became the triumph in some way for Pink Floyd. And after leaving, he was just really a deep emotional presence as part of the fabric of Pink Floyd. And it's because of his leaving that they wrote Shine On, You Crazy Diamond, and the song that we're going to talk about tonight, Wish You Were Here. And there was a famous studio moment that defined this experience for Pink Floyd. And as they were around and recording 1975, Abbey Road Studios, Sid unexpectedly showed up and he looked completely unrecognizable. And they did not know who he was at first. The change was so profound. And when they realized that it was Sid, they were all extremely emotional. And Roger Waters reportedly just cried. And he said that this moment of realizing that he was seeing his friend, but it was not his friend, was where the origin of the song Wish You Were Here came about. And so later he ended up returning to Cambridge, England. He lived a private life. He avoided the public eye, and he never rejoined the music industry. So Syd Barrett is remembered as like a symbol of creativity and fragility and the cost of fame and excess. And so without Sid, Pink Floyd wouldn't exist. But with losing Sid, Pink Floyd became what it became. And so it's important that we give this album and this song context, because this is where the group began to start talking about how to honor him and still recognize that this happens all the time in life, where we have people who are part of our life and for whatever reasons, could be addiction, could be hard times, could be death, could be a lot of things that they remain haunting to us. They're a presence for us. And so this song and this album was about really just not just missing someone, but what happens to humans when we lose people we love who are still alive. So how many of you have people in your life that you've lost that are still alive? So the album Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd is one of the most emotionally charged and conceptually unified works in rock history. This album was released in 1975, and it followed the massive success of Dark Side of the Moon, and it carries the pressure of that with every single note and song written here. And this album cover is so iconic. And when you look at this, right, so the album cover was designed by Storm Thorgensen of Hypnosis, and it features two men shaking hands, and one of the men is on fire. I mean, it just leaves so much to the imagination. And I often think that album covers themselves are poetry. And so the symbolism in this album cover is one man is getting burned in the music industry while he's shaking the hand of this other person. And it's all about these fake interactions and in the unspoken. He sees the man's on fire, the man knows he's on fire, and yet they're still shaking hands and agreeing on obviously a business deal because they're in business suits. They're not wearing joggers or track suits. They're in business suits. And it looks like it could be a television studio or something, a television set. And so I look at this album cover and I immediately can go back to my room and my big old clunky Princess Leia chunky headphones that I had back in the day. And with the big, long, huge coiled cord plugged in with this big hole into my stacked receiver. And the opening chords, you know, of that plucking of the guitar and the acoustics is so wonderful and haunting. And so the album, Wish You Were Here, at its core, it's about three interconnected themes, if you will. The first is about absence and loss. Many of the songs, Shine On You Crazy Diamond and Welcome to the Machine, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, the next part of it really is just about the absence and loss. And this was inspired, as I had shared, by the decline and absence of Syd Barrett, their brother in music arms. And they were starting to experience some success. And like many of the artists of that time, like David Bowie and The Who and the Rolling Stones, they had a lot of pushback against the industry as they were being created with this fame and this industrialized way in which music became about production and consumerism. And so this album, Wish You Were Here, is about the music industry machine of how artists get used and packaged and disconnected. And this is really expressed in the song Welcome to the Machine. And then the last concept that Wish You Were Here is really embedded in is this idea of disconnection from self. And Pink Floyd, they are masters of writing these gorgeous anthems, Comfortably Numb and Another Brick in the Wall, and so many songs that really look at this idea of emotional numbness and disconnection from reality and going through life on autopilot. And so the album itself only has 5 tracks, and this was intentional. And the album, they have said, begins and ends with this idea of Syd Barrett. And so compared to The Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here is more spacious and atmospheric, longer compositions, a lot more introspective. It feels like a meditation in a way, very reflective, a slow unfolding of emotion. And so this album endures because I think it's the music for sure, but the lyrics chant and sort of pray and sing about these ideas of losing one's self and losing people you love and navigating a world that pulls you away from what matters. All themes that are very salient and last forever, in my opinion. And so the song itself, Wish You Were Here, written by Roger Waters primarily, and it was because of his like disappointment and loss in Sid. And it wasn't only written for him, but primarily it was written for him. And he said that it was about the idea of being disconnected and disconnection and losing yourself. And the iconic radio introduction on this album was intentional. It wanted to be like it was playing on a crackling radio to kind of try to signal reaching someone through the static and the distance. And the guitar lick was recorded to feel imperfect and improvised. And so this title track explores these very deep themes through comparison and contradiction, which are two primary elements I teach all the time in poetry. Is if you want to write a very strong poem or a strong lyric, use contradiction. Use juxtaposed ideas together in a sentence. And so these lyrics do that. It's one of the most performed songs they've ever had. And Roger Waters saw this song of being present physically, but not there mentally. He really loved this song. David Gilmour was also really kind of mixed on this because of his coming into the band based on Sid's exit. So he wanted the song to feel intimate and fragile. And so he used his guitar introduction to convey that. And so let's go to the first clip of Wish You Were Here, Pink Floyd.
You can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain. Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail? A smile from a veil. Do you think you can tell?
All right, so he's asking questions, and this is a really powerful way when we're writing poetry or when we're writing something for ourselves or we're trying to express ourselves. Ask yourself a question out loud. And so the question is, do you think you can tell heaven from hell? And that's such an interesting question to even ask somebody if they can tell the difference between heaven and hell. And for me, this introduction starts to bring in this idea of absence of somebody. We love somebody, there's heaven, but then there's hell when they're absent. Or maybe there's hell when they're present and heaven when they're absent. And both of those things can be true. And then we talk about blue skies from pain. Blue skies from pain. So to me, the idea of blue skies is like the dream and the vision and the hope. And sometimes we're looking out to the stars for that hope. And blue skies from pain. Pain is all about the reality, being here in this life, in your skin onesie, doing the best you can. So that's an interesting contrast, blue skies from pain. And can we show those lyrics again, Jared? Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail? So a green field, again, open, possibility, endlessness, a cold steel rail. That's the opposite of unlimited. That's a cold steel rail is something that stops and guards and separates. So that's a very powerful contrast. A green field from a cold steel rail, the openness and the sort of closedness of that idea. And then we go to this, a smile from a veil. So when I read this line, a smile from a veil is like the reality of you being present with somebody, sharing yourself, being open. And from a veil is when you're separate, you're guarded, you only show the version of yourself of that you really want others to see. And this would be appropriate because they probably didn't know how disconnected Syd Barrett actually was. And so I feel like this line really addresses that the band wished they would have known if he was really in pain or not, and if they could have told the difference. And so then he asks, do you think you can tell? It's like really coming back to the idea of how closely are you paying attention to those around you? And do you know the difference between hope and despair, and hope and suffering and possibility? And so these ideas are really beautifully juxtaposed in that opening paragraph of that song. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, this section is just gorgeous, just absolutely gorgeous. And so I'm wondering, when you've heard this song or have sung this song, has the meaning of these words ever landed to where you contemplated what they were saying? Have you reflected on these comparisons? Because they're so powerful. And so, did they get you to trade? He's still asking the questions here. This whole song is just a succession of questions, contemplations, right? So did they get you to trade your heroes for ghosts? And I think, again, going back to the context of this song, this would be Roger Waters or David Gilmour's looking at Syd, who they once revered as a hero and once looked up to, and now feels like a ghost. He no longer is present to the degree that he was. And so heroes for ghosts, this to me says so much about the people that we believe in and look up to, and then ultimately end up disappointing us, and that, or end up no longer in our lives. That's such a heavy, beautifully expressed poetic way of describing loss of people we love. Hot ashes for trees, hot air for a cool breeze. So hot ashes for trees, this to me is like when you burn it all down, when you burn all the forest down and there's nothing left, and in place of, what would have been beautiful trees. Hot air for a cool breeze, that goes along the lines of like setting everything on fire. Cold comfort for change. Cold comfort for change. Oh, okay. So to me, when I hear this line, I think that this is about resisting change, staying in situations that no longer serve us, staying with people who no longer serve us, And rather than making the change or the transition or having the hard conversation, we deal with cold comfort. And that's a beautiful way to describe passivity to me. And then, did you exchange a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage? And so this to me is like when you go into deciding you're going to make a change in your life, a big change, but you're afraid, you're staying with the cold comfort rather than going and facing the difficulty of the battle, the emotional battle, the conflict. You exchange that for a lead role in a cage. You choose to stay stuck and you choose to limit yourself. And I think those two ideas, a walk-on part in the war, meaning facing the difficult change, for a lead role in a cage, staying stuck. So beautiful. All right, so I'm going to go to a couple of the comments. Gulia says that the memories bring back this time of going to see the live concert in Moscow, Russia in 1986. That must have been amazing. And Patty shares that she's never really thought about these lyrics and that these lyrics are so layered. Yes, they truly are. They truly are. All right, so let's wrap up Pink Floyd. We're going to go to one more clip. Oh, it's so beautiful. I can hardly stand it. It's so gorgeous. So after he goes through asking all these questions about the sacrifice and the fears and acceptance and letting go, he then laments, how I wish you were here. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl year after year. Now, what a powerful and beautiful image is that. Two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl. That just creates such an image. And that is the beautiful thing about poetry, is that it allows you to create expressive ideas through imagery in a way that speaks deeper and more profoundly than just saying, oh, we just parted ways, right? But talking about being a fishbowl, two lost souls. And then it goes into running over the same old ground. What have we found? The same old fears. Running over the same old ground. What have we found? The same old fears. That's just heartbreaking to me. That's just heartbreaking. And that's like, no matter how many times you wish something would be different with someone, and no matter how many times you try to go over things again and again, and then asking, what has come of all of this? And in the end, it's the same old fears. And that's kind of the idea of resignation and acceptance and letting go. And I wish you were here, even though it ain't going to happen. So beautiful. So beautiful. So this song is really about being trapped. Two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl. It's about being trapped, and it's about grief without closure, maybe. And I don't love the word closure, and I don't believe we do close from grief. I don't believe that at all. But let's just say it's grief without a final exclamation or like a definitive, this is it, we're done. It's just the drifting and the separating and unsettling, and that it leaves all that lingering stuff. And sometimes it's not always them that's changed, but it could also be us. And that is part of what happens in life with friends and with time. And the song is a really beautiful, sad expression of poetry, in my opinion. Wish you were here. So do you have a favorite line from this song so far? Put them in the chat if you do. Two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl, cold steel rail, from a green field. What else was there that was so beautiful? Just some really beautiful lyrics in this song. Blue skies from pain, hot ashes for trees. So some really beautiful, beautiful lyrics in this song. I'd love to hear if you have a favorite that stood out to you or that sticks with you. All right, now we're going to go on. We're going to come up maybe not quite a decade, but we're going to stay with the British. I don't know why I love the British so much. I just do. But we're going to go with David Bowie and Freddie Mercury and Queen. And the next song we're going to do is Under Pressure. Now, why I wanted to pick this song is because it feels so extremely relevant for this day and age, and also because the Integrity Artemis mission chose this as one of their morning songs, Under Pressure. And so even though the song describes being under pressure, the song is really about love. And so how this song came together was almost by accident. And I love that in music, there's a lot of these stories where things come together by accident. And in 1981, it was a collaboration between Queen and David Bowie. And this was born during a spontaneous studio session that was at a mountain studios in Switzerland. And Queen were recording there. And David Bowie just happened to be in town. And so they got together just to jam, no big plan. And then out of that jam session came Under Pressure. And it started with this recognizable bass line created by John Deacon. And the band reportedly argued whoever came up with the song, but most credit John Deacon because of this bass line. And so the session wasn't initially smooth. Can you imagine David Bowie and Freddie Mercury in one space at one time? It's almost like an artistic implosion, a creative combustion. But that energy created some magic. And so David Bowie insisted that they didn't really want to hear each other's full vocal takes beforehand. He wanted it to be somewhat of a surprise and spontaneous. And so they did record tracks separate and together. And they wanted to make sure that they ignited and kept each other's energy at optimum height. And so the lyrics were a collaborative effort, but it was mostly David Bowie who shaped the final lyrics. And of course, they explore pressure in modern life, social struggle, emotional isolation, themes that David Bowie was so well known for and so prolific in. And so let's take a look at the first clip. All right. So aside from muddied up, But the words are actually quite fascinating in this song. I really enjoyed going through and looking at them again. But pressure, pushing down on me, pressing down on you, no man asked for, under pressure that burns a building down, splits a family in two, puts people on streets. There's a lot in that opening stanza of words in this song, like all this pressure, and that burns a building down, so much pressure, right? Splits a family in two, puts people on streets. And I just think the acknowledgement of all of the pressure that we endure every single day, the enormity and the immenseness of it. And he's giving this like a call to action. Think of all this pressure. And that it happens. What I love about this, and it's something to add, is that he talks about it with the impact it has in the world around us. And then it's got this very personalized, splits a family in two. And then the social element of putting people on the streets. All of these parts are related to the type of pressure that Freddie Mercury is singing about. All right, next one.
Chase the terror of knowing this world is about. Watching some good friends scream and let me out.
Okay, that's the terror of knowing what this world is about. That is such a gorgeous line. When you think about pressure, that's the terror of knowing what this world is about. And I'm telling you, I'm feeling that today, 2026. That's the terror of knowing what this world is about. Watching some good friends scream, let me out. And I have a lot of friends who are going through some really hard times right now. And the pressure, right? All the things, the terror of knowing what this world is about. So those lines are really profound because it's what we know to be true and are helpless to do anything about, and how it impacts our friends. All right, let's go to the next one.
Like a blind man, sat on the fence, but it don't work. Keep coming up with love, but it's a slash torn.
All right, so turned away from it all like a blind man. So, I mean, a lot of us, that's what we're doing right now. We're doing our best to turn away from it all. But what he's saying is turned away from it all like a blind man, sat on a fence, but it don't work. You know, when we just sit on the fence and we're just watching this terror of this world and what it's about, and we're trying to turn away, and we're sitting on the fence, but it's not going to work. It can't work anymore. You can't sit on the fence and you can't turn away from it. So then he says, keep coming up with love, but it's so slashed and torn. And I want to say, I relate to this line more than any of the lines in the song. Keep coming up with love, but it's so slashed and torn. We want to hope, we want to connect, and we want to dream, but our little fragile hearts are just so worn and torn right now. And so this is really where we are doing our best and under pressure, right? Under pressure. So this song, was there any more lyrics that I had to this song, or was that the last that I had, the last slide? One more clip. Okay, thanks. All right, so we're going to go to one last clip. Sorry, I'm just trying to check my notes. We'll go to one more clip and we'll summarize. All right, so Why? Love. Insanity laughs under pressure. We're breaking. So this first part of this is really just about why are we under such pressure? And he's trying to keep coming back to love. And he's like asking for it. Love, love, love. Insanity laughs under pressure. Don't I know that? Don't I know that one? I've had that insanity laughter quite a few times. Then we're breaking, right? We are breaking. And when we get to that point, when we're breaking, and it's asking yourself, you're asking yourself, can you find that hope? Can you find that love? And think about your world today, being so overwhelmed, being so under pressure. And somebody somewhere out there, Minneapolis, Minnesota, is asking themselves, can we give ourselves just one more chance? And so this is where we dig in deep. We dig into our humanity. And why can't we give love that one more chance? Why can't we give love one more chance? So this song is really about that battle cry for digging in through the pressure, trying to find that one more chance for love. And it's so tattered and torn. Insanity is laughing. We're breaking. But the way this song comes together, the way Freddie Mercury just cries out, why can't we give love one more chance? Give love, give love, give love. The way he sings it, it's like a prayer and begging and really just trying to find that hope through love. I love this song. I do love this song. And he closes out the song with love, such an old-fashioned word, and love dares you to care for the people on the edge of the night. And love dares you to change our way of caring about ourselves. This is our last dance. This is ourselves under pressure. And the way he closes out the song, the way they close out the song, I should say, is so beautiful, because love's such an old-fashioned word. Love dares you to care for the people on the edge of the night. So are you caring for anybody in your life that's on the edge of the night? And what does the edge of the night represent to you? And love dares you to change our way of caring about ourselves. And are you caring for yourself these days? Are you caring for yourself these days? It's tough. It is tough. I'm with you. It's really, really a tough prospect. And so these two songs really speak to the idea of what we hold on to, what we let go of, digging in, trying to find that love and that one more chance. That one more chance. I don't particularly want to be a fish swimming in a fishbowl, but sometimes it's hard not to be. And so of these two songs, you know, they really do speak to the reality that we're living in 2026 in some ways. But I love that these lyrics, even though Under Pressure was such a commercialized song, I'm not sure how many people truly realize how deep and profound these lyrics are, and how poetic that they are, and how they speak to such a deep level of truth of how we break and how we come back and how we try yet again. So that is what I have for today. I would love to hear your thoughts on the lyrics. Daria is in agreement with Under Pressure. And Gulia is also in sync with these lyrics applicable to our dark times. And so I want to make sure that you're all aware, if this is something that you're inspired by and want to help support, I would totally be okay to take contributions to help fund the tech and the production of this, because I look at this as a living, breathing classroom available for the community to share and learn and become inspired. And so any support, any amount, absolutely, truly appreciated. It means so much to me. And I am grateful for anything that you are able to help and contribute. And thinking about poetry being available here and now, because our hearts, our broken hearts need it. The world needs to take a few moments to reflect and connect and engage and find the hope. And the way we do that, the way I know how to do that, is to help people express themselves, the grief, the love, the confusion, the anger, the sadness, the joy, the green fields, the cold steel rails, all of it, the heavens and the hells. And so I am really just loving that this always gets me to reflect also. And Pink Floyd, I would love it to hear, when you hear these songs again, what stands out and if the words connected with you tonight. So next week, I'm thinking I'm going to do a round robin of like 6 lines from the greatest 60s. Well, no, wait a minute. What do I want to do? 6 lines from the greatest 70 songs of all times, or 7 lines from the greatest 70 songs from all time. And I'm going to pick some songs that we grew up with on AM radio, and I'm going to pluck out 1 or 2 lines from each of these songs and break them down. I know one for sure I'm going to do is I'm Not in Love by 10cc, because that song, I have so much to say about that song. And so, are you listening to yourselves? Are you listening to music? Are you listening to the lyrics? Definitely take 5 minutes. That's all you need. 5 minutes to tune in and just slow down. 5 minutes to take care of your heart. 5 minutes to feed your soul. 5 minutes with something that means something to you. Music is one of the greatest and easiest ways to do that, with headphones, not while you're scrolling cat videos, not while you're thinking about your shopping list, not while you're creating everything it is that you need to do, not while you're doing 5 other things, but literally just you and yourself and your heart and memory lane. And so I hope you're going to join me next week on Vinyl Poetry Lounge, 6 p.m. Central, live streaming here on YouTube and the socials. And we are going to have an amazing time. And do feel free, if you have some song requests for next week, one of your favorite 70s tunes, hit me up. You can email me, go onto my website at janalopez.com. And I will be taking all lyrics and lines and songs under consideration for next week's round robin, where I present some of the most amazing lyrics from the 1970s. And I can't wait to spend the day with you, hanging out, walking down memory lane. And so, in the meantime, keep your vinyl spinning and your poetry flowing. Thanks for joining me, Jana Lopez, on Vinyl Poetry Lounge. Thank you for joining me for this week's show of Vinyl Poetry Lounge. I'm your hostess, Jana Lopez. Keep your vinyl spinning and poetry flowing till we meet again next time.